In this CAS instructional video, we will be covering CL printer setup. In order to find out what type of label you have, please use the link in the video description. Okay, in this part of the video, we will be removing the paper cartridge from our scale. At the side panel here, first thing you want to do is remove the face plate. It should pop off pretty easily. This allows you access to your paper roll. You can change your paper roll from inside the scale, but it is easier to remove it completely. So first flip open the thermal print head lever. It should slide out pretty easily if it's not caught on anything. And you are all set. We're going to move on now to installing our new paper roll. Okay, we're going to start installing our paper roll here. Start by removing this little black clasp on the bottom of the roll. Okay, normally your paper would be completely out, but we have a little bit left on our roll here. You want to set up your new label by removing probably about the first 4 or 5 labels. That will give you the option to wrap around the spool at the end. You do lose a few labels, but that's okay. I'm gonna skip ahead here to see our label. It's about how many you should take off. And installing this here, note that technically you should go up above this little plastic piece here on the roll paper, but I've actually found out that you get less paper jams in instances I've seen. But you can do it either way. You can roll the paper above that plastic piece or below like I did. You want to roll almost around half the circumference of this paper spool and then slide the black clasp over it so it holds it in place. You want it pretty tight, but obviously you're not going to be able to get it completely tight, so use this, roll the paper back and use the black roller to spool it until it's pretty taut. Now once you have it pretty tight, you want to just make sure it wraps around one time so that you know it's going to wrap and not get stuck. And this is how it should look. You can see here that the paper is just sticking out slightly right above where the spool around words are. And that's where you really want it to be. Okay, now we're going to install the paper cartridge back into the scale. It should slide in as easily as it came out, but make sure that in this area here, that it is above the roller and above the rubber roller as well. It should slide in pretty easily. If you get stuck, just kind of massage it in there. It should slide right above this roller here and right underneath the thermal print head. You can see also where the plastic piece is sliding underneath and everything is spooling around like it should. You can see here it should really be inside this plastic area here. When you put the faceplate on, it will make sure that you have all of that installed properly. You want to just give it one more roll around until the first label is just about to come off of the edge of the scale. You can see here, we will show some arrows of how things should go down and around just in case you are good to put the faceplate back on. Make sure you have it installed the right way. You really can't put it in the wrong way. And again, that will clamp everything to where it should be as far as the paper. Now, big mistake here that I almost made, I almost closed it without closing the thermal print head lever. You will get an error. The scale will not allow you to go without flipping that back down. So if you get that error, TPH error, that's what's causing it. Just close that lever and we're good to go to the scale. Okay, now we're going to go to the scale to set up our printer settings. We'll point out before you get started with this, use the feed button to feed 2 or 3 labels if you haven't already. This will help the gap sensor get into line and everything else to feed around, make sure that you are getting your labels to come out properly. Next, we will go to the 1730 menu. This is your printer hardware menu. You can also get to it through the regular menu tree by hitting Menu, down to Print, number 7. We're going to cover the basics here. There will be a video covering some more in-depth features. For now, we're not going to change any of our label items. This is where you can add different things to your label. Markdown we will not cover either. We're going to be traveling to the printer hardware option. Print mode is where you will change between label and continuous label. Those are the two most popular options. There's also a ticket mode. By default, it will be 0, the label mode. So if you need continuous label, this is where you would change it, and you would hit Save. I'm not going to change that right now. We will cover that later. Number 2 is where you can change your label size. Default will be 60 by 40, which is most of the labels that we offer. Obviously, continuous label would not be this size and would also have a different gap length, but by default it will come 60, 40, and 2mm gap length. If you have a custom label and you need the changes, this is where you would do it. If you do make any changes, make sure that you press the Save button first. For now, we're going to leave our ticket size default. We're going to travel to the number 3 option, sensor calibration. This is important when you first get your scale. They do this in the factory before they ship it to you, but you might want to do this after changing any of your labels. We're going to input the default numbers, which is 128. I'm going to press clear first, and then enter 128. You're going to use the test button, which is hidden here under the Pay tab. You will get a few labels printing out, and then you will get some numbers. This is important to note that anything around 100 is very good. Any low number here under gap and peel, any very low number usually means that your gap sensor is bad and will need replacement. So if you're having issues with your printer, it's good to come to this menu and check this. So our numbers look good, so we're going to move on to the next option, sensor and motor. These are different settings that you can change for your printer motor. These will be on by default or yes with the label mode. If you need to change these, this is where you would do it. If you are changing to a continuous label, they will go off by default because they will not need to have a rewind on the motor. Now we're going to leave that. Printer intensity is where you would change the intensity of the print on your label or your ticket. So, this printer doesn't use any ink. It's a thermal print head, but if you do up the intensity and make it darker, it may wear out your printer head quicker. So by default, if you're okay with that, you can leave that setting, but if you need your print a little bit darker, that's where you would do it here. You can use the test button to check it. Okay, number 6 is important. This is adjusting the feed length for your label. This is a common thing you will change if you're using a custom label and you need to get your label to print out exactly where you want it, or if something is not printing where you want it, depending on your settings in the label editor, this is where you would change it. I'm going to show where our label is printing by default. So we'll call up a fake PLU here. Let's see, we'll print a couple out. You can see our label is perfect for what we're doing with the 8010 label. And depending on what label you have, you want to check what label you have. But our 8010 is perfect right now. But I'm going to show how making changes to the feed length will change that. Go back to the adjust feed length. A good way to think of it is negative is less. If you put negative, you can change to that by the 0 key. Here. If you do negative, less label will print out and it'll print in a different spot on your label. So think less is coming out, so it's going to move up. positives, more label will be pushed out. So depending on what you need to do, we're going to do a negative 20. You should be able to see a difference here. You can test it, and you can see that our label didn't really come all the way out like it did before. So you can already see a difference there in the feed length. Now I'm going to show you how much of an impact that made on our PLU here. You can see that now it's not really in the spot it should be, but it did move. So that's what we're looking for. Now that we saved that setting, you see that it went back to 0. So in order to add that back and get it back to our default position, we took 20 away, so we're going to add 20 back. Test that and see now our label came out back to where it should be, and we will go to our PLU once again just to test this and make sure that everything's where it should be. Okay, see it's right where it should be. If you are having issues with your label placement, go to the gap sensor adjustment and run that calibration again, and we'll also cover a few other ways in the dealer parameters that you can adjust this stuff. But if you get stuck, go back and do that sensor calibration again. And see our numbers do change. You want to go back to the default 128 number. This will help you with any issues, or if you get stuck, go back to 128, test, and see our numbers are good again, and the placement is okay. Back to the 1730 menu. There are a few other options here that we will cover in a future video, but we covered the basics, and this is all you really need to know to get your initial setup of your scale printer. Preprint mode is also a common option, but you really shouldn't have to adjust that off the bat. That will be covered in depth on what that does in a future video. Okay, in this part of the video we will be covering the thermal print head chess test. You'll need to access this through your calibration mode. So you need access to your cal switch. So hold that down and turn the scale on. Get your cal mode menu. We are looking for the self-test option. After that, scroll down until you see chess print. Option 4. Use the test button. That will print out a test label with a chess print set on it. It will show on the screen what a bad chess print looks like, and that means that you're having issues with the thermal print head. See, ours came out perfectly. This is what you want to see. Chess print all the way across. No divisions or white strips or anything like that on here. You want to see a full chess print. The other thing you can see through the cal mode menu is your sensor status. This will tell you if any of your sensors are blocked or damaged, or the thermal print head lever is open. So back out of the self-test option and select printer sensor. See if you get an open TPH error. That means your head-up sensor is open. If your peel-off sensor is blocked, that means that something is obstructing it. We will cover how to clean that in a later part of the video. Okay, now we'll be covering how to switch to your continuous strip label. We access this through the print mode menu that we talked about before. We're going to switch to option 2, continuous label. Make sure to save that. That's all you have to do to switch to your continuous label, but you will have to make some adjustments depending on your label size. And you can see here the end margin is now changed from the gap as it was on the regular label. Depending on your label setup and your custom label, you will have to make various changes here. Okay, in this part I just wanted to point out some of the printer components we've been talking about, and also show you how to clean your gap sensor if it's blocked. If you do have any more questions, please visit CAS-USA.com. Thank you for watching this video.